Welcome today, folks. Today's going to be a little different on this segment of this episode because, usually have creators and all that. But we got my number one homie right here. You know what I'm saying? I want to introduce you to Nichole Langley. She is a licensed mental health counselor, right, in New York. See, I
Hmm.
got it right. I got it right. Got it right. I should know this. It's only
You
been like
should.
10 years. And you're also a licensed professional counselor in Wyoming and Colorado.
Yes.
So, since you got a license in Colorado, can you send me some weed? No,
No, I'm not
no,
that
that's
fancy.
not. That's not. You're not up there yet.
None of my jurisdiction. Sorry,
Mm.
guy.
Well, the reason I decided to bring Nicole on, we were having this conversation, and it actually came up in other interviews, not in just this podcast, but throughout the community on Facebook as well. We talk about mental health. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
we're not gonna sit here and have a therapy session, but some signs are good to recognize, and you know, she's been there. Shit, I wouldn't be here. Put it this way, I would not be here if she was not around. She influenced me to just think outside the box.
Stay alive.
And when it came to yes, because I was at that point with music where I was stuck. I didn't know what to do. I kind of felt like I was getting too old for music. And when we was back at Target back in the day, and I had that little crazy comic book idea, you're like, do it. You know what I'm saying? So you were kind of, with me through that, especially through the many downs that I've had in this journey of being a creator, especially in comic books and stuff like that. But before we go on, just tell me a little bit, tell us a little bit about you, about what, your qualifications.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, thanks for having me. I am, like you said, a licensed mental health counselor in the state of New York and also a licensed professional counselor in Wyoming and Colorado. So that does not allow me to prescribe anything. It
See,
basically just means I'm a provider of therapy.
weed
Um,
is therapy. It's very
for some
therapeutic.
people, it sure is. Yeah.
It's very therapeutic.
Uh, I'm more on the proponent of talk therapy. I think it's really great for people, regardless of what they're going through, just to get their stuff out. I think a lot of us get in our heads a lot, stay stuck in our heads,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
it can cause more problems. It can complicate problems. So my thoughts on therapy are really it's just a good platform just to vent a lot of the time. It doesn't have to be anything dramatic or serious or crazy. And I think really everybody in the world at any time can benefit from it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it gets it gets a little crazy when we're sitting down and trying to dig into our brains to come up with the next, just putting a project together, um, especially going through it, and a
Mhm.
couple things. Hold on, let me shut off the phone because crazy people are calling me. But anyway,
And give them a number.
no, but you're not you're not a creator, so it's a little different. But you are very arts and craftsy. You know what I'm saying? I think you've got more arts and crafts stuff in your house than most schools. But cause I've always, especially you've told me a few times, that was always kind of like an outlet.
Mhm.
You've always been a hustler.
Mhm.
You would be looking for a job while working three other jobs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, burnout and things like that, I'm pretty sure you're very familiar with it. But from your professional perspective, what makes creative work more emotionally, different from other types of work?
Yeah.
Putting together these projects opposed to, the regular daily grind of sitting in an office or
Mhm.
working with customers and clients and things
Mhm.
like that.
I think creators and artists are ability, like they're putting themselves out there for the world to see in a way that, other folks in other industries don't necessarily have to, right? So you like working in retail, you can go to work and kind of put on an act of like, I'm happy, things are good, like this is what it is, and it could be a show, and you clock out at 5 o'clock and go home and things are not fine.
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think a lot of people do that in life and in careers and in social interactions with family. But when you have a creator or an artist, they're, putting work out, whether it's comics or music or, paintings and drawings, there's a real sense of emotion that goes into it because a lot of the times you guys don't necessarily just think of these things, you know, in the shower one day. They're things you've
Sometimes.
been through. Right, but
Sometimes.
it's based on something you've been through or experienced or seen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you're, kind of turning that around and putting it out in a story or a song for all the world to see. And then there's, it kind of opens you up to criticism. It opens you
Mm-hmm.
up to just that vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like, one thing I know I do, I've spoken to a bunch of musicians and artists and painters and everything else, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of similar response I get is, they always put a little bit of themselves into their projects. You could, hold on a second. Everybody puts a little bit of themselves into a project, like, is that a reason like a lot of us tend to kind of push back a little bit, especially when, we're afraid of getting that things don't go our way,
Mhm.
people not really liking it, that criticism sometimes, because even doing this podcast, I'm so used to being out and about. I've performed in front of so many people, but when I came to the comic scene and just being more one-on-one with people,
Mhm.
I would get anxiety. Like, oh my God. Like, even today I was
Mhm.
like, oh my God. Every day before I interview somebody, I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna do right? Is this gonna be good? Like, I start to kind of doubt myself, even though I know I'm a people person. I could easily gather a conversation.
Mhm.
Like, what do you think about that? Like, why does that tend to fuck with us a little more extra? You know?
Mhm. I mean, I think in part it's that vulnerability piece, right? Like you're putting yourself out there and then that opens it up to people saying, well, this isn't good, this sucks. And then, okay, well, now am I a bad person? Like, do I suck? Um, but I think like beyond that, you can go perform in front of a crowd of hundreds and thousands of people and it's a
Hmm.
show and
Yeah.
you're a character essentially. So it's not you as a person sometimes.
Hmm.
And there's potentially a little bit of separation there, but then at the end of the day too, like you are that person, you become that person,
Hmm.
right? Like you are Malice, Mal, whatever you want to call it, because we don't use your government name.
We don't use that. No, we don't use it. It's like my niece says, "Oh, you said his name. He's gonna
Right.
punch you in the face."
And you've embodied that in all that it
Hmm.
is, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
And you can kind of separate yourself or create yourself in a way, but at the end of the day, that's still you. Like
Hmm.
regardless of what name you go by, or if you have like a ghostwriter writing your stuff or anything like that, like it's still you and you're putting
Hmm.
yourself out there, and it's a really vulnerable thing to do.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. Like I like to put a little bit of my story into everything. Like Chaos Theory, Chronicles of Malo and Cramp. You know what I'm saying? I like to put a little bit of that little
Mhm.
Latin spice, that little ghetto-ness into
Right.
my 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 creations. But I also feel like I I carry a bigger burden because I at the same time like I'm in love with two cultures, man, hip hop and comic books, and I'm just on the verge of trying to do. I'm not gonna say the impossible because anything is possible, but trying to bring those two together it's definitely overwhelming, and I'm starting to
Mhm.
kind of feel like I don't know if it's burnout
Yeah.
or maybe I'm just tired or I don't know. Like, what do you think is the difference between like I don't know if I'm burned out or I'm just overworked, I'm tired,
Right.
maybe I'm just I don't know what's the next step. Like,
Mhm.
you know, what should I look out for when it comes to, burnout, especially burnout, because we know that could be bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think people can burn out in all sorts of fields, not even just the creative world, but I
Yeah.
think especially for creators and artists, it's probably a lot easier because you're doing this all day, every day in some
Hmm.
aspects, right? Like you're always thinking about the next project, you're always thinking about the last project that just dropped. And at some point, there's no break. You can't leave work at 5 o'clock and go home because
Yeah.
work is always working.
Hmm.
Um, I think like when you're thinking about like, well, am I tired? Am I burnt out? Like, am I just having like a creative block? It really comes down to like, what does that recovery look like? Can
Mm-hmm.
you take a week off and rest and recover and go sit on the beach somewhere and feel great and come back and be like, I'm ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you do that and you come back and you're like, fuck, I still don't want to do this,
Yeah. So what
and then
should we
it's more
do
so like,
when we're getting on when we feel like that? Like you said, we step away, we go for a walk, smoke break,
right,
watch a movie. Like even if that don't work, like
mhm,
like well, what's going on?
yeah. I mean, I think sometimes for a lot of people, it's you really do have to take like a full break from it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say walk away from it entirely, but like, I mean, even think about for yourself, right? Like, you put out music many, many years ago. It was everything you did all the time. You were
Mm-hmm.
touring, you were this, you were that, and then it stopped,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And like, you took a pretty big gap there before your
Sheesh.
next project.
Yeah. Between music projects, it was when the hell did Trailer Park Man? It was like almost over. It was like about 15 years or so, 10 years or something like that. Because my
Mhm.
last album came out in 2011, and that's when it all
Yeah,
came to a halt. And I don't know. As a creator, I just felt like it wasn't enough.
right,
Especially just getting into my 30s, being realistic. Like, do I want to be a rapper in
right.
my 40s still? I'm not saying struggling. We had our fun. We did our thing. We made our dollars. We weren't big and famous, but we did
Mhm.
our thing.
Yeah,
But I just felt like sometimes we need more, and I kind of feel like that's when we start to overload on ideas, and we
hmm,
try to we try to put too many eggs in too many baskets at the same time.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you know. I used to ask you like, what should I do? What should I do? I don't know what to do. Like I'm just all I know how to do is
Mhm.
rap. I know how
Right.
to rap and make
Mhm.
stories. And then you and Matt were like, yo, let him just write a comic book. I was like, I could do that.
Yeah.
I could do that. And then, you know, the craziness on that was insane. How many times I was like, how many times I wanted to quit? Like I can't do this.
Right.
Can't do this. This was hard. I
Hmm.
can't do it. What the fuck do I know about
Yeah.
putting a comic book together? I could say drugs all day. I can't put a comic book together to save my life.
Right.
Like I just didn't know that path, and
Mhm.
it got dark a lot. And that's one thing I feel like a lot of us tend to do. We go into these dark places and we always need that way out, and sometimes knowing what it's gonna look like before we get in there could kind of save time, save a life. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
what should we look out for when we feeling like, we just need to step away and just clear our mind and before we kind of dig ourselves a little bit too much into this abyss, you know?
I mean, I think like some things just to look out for in terms of, potential burnout, or is this burnout versus I'm just tired or having creative block is um like, what is your attitude towards the creative process, right? Are you dreading
Hmm.
it? Is it now all of a sudden something that you're like feeling obligated to do or to participate in?
Hmm.
Um, do you just feel like you don't care one way or the other? Like, this could flop, it could take off, and I just don't really care. I think of like
Hmm.
the analogy of like somebody could give you $1 million or tell you they just ran over your cat, right? And you kind of have the same reaction, like, meh,
Yeah, like yeah.
okay. Um, that's a pretty big sign of burnout, right? Like, just kind of flat, no feelings.
Hmm.
I think obviously beyond that, there's darker thoughts of like not wanting to be here anymore, feeling like it's too
Yeah.
much just to be alive almost.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a
and I
very
think,
scary place.
yeah, and I think that's where, for creators and artists, it kind of it's a fine line between like that passion and pursuing that passion and it becoming too much, right?
Hmm.
Like, now it's not just all your energy is into these projects, but now it's your full identity as well.
Yeah.
And then you don't have the energy left to create, let alone to be yourself. And then what do you do? Do you
Hmm.
start over? Like you
Yeah.
said, like everything you wanted to do was make music and be a rapper. And then as you got older, well, now maybe that's changed. So now who am I
Yeah.
as a person?
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
can bring a lot of like mood swings is not probably the right way to put it, but like a lot of emotional fluctuation.
yeah. I feel like I suffered a massive identity crisis. And it's
Hmm.
not because
Yeah.
I don't know who I am. I know exactly who I am, but
Right.
what I can be. You know what I'm saying? It was more of a
Mhm.
what was next, and I didn't know what was next, because, where I come from, thinking about being a comic book creator or things like that, it wasn't really, especially when at my age growing up, that wasn't a thing. It wasn't.
Mhm.
It was either you either went to military, you went to college, you went to work, or you hustle. That's it.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
we weren't really sitting down and you know shit like that. You know what I'm saying? And chose to chose to hustle, work and hustle. So when it came to doing something different outside of my norm and out my world, I was like, what if I don't fit in?
Mhm.
And fitting in and not feeling good enough too. Like, it's a shitty feeling, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I feel like being a creator, we take that a little more personal. We put up a post of you
Mhm.
know, a cover that we're working on, or some of the internal pages, and you're gonna get some love. Oh, that's cool, that's dope, that's great. And you got that one person where it's like, oh, this is whack, this is shit. And I feel
Mhm.
like we'll take that one comment
Oh
to the
yeah.
heart, and I
Mhm.
feel like that's where it could get dark. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and
And
when
the
we do,
comparison piece too of,
yeah,
everybody's, you see all these people who are like overnight internet sensations off of like one song or,
yeah,
one clip or whatever. And then it's like, well, why can't I do that? What's wrong with
yeah,
me? Why am I not being successful like that? And I mean, you've seen a lot of artists in the last couple of years with like TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that, like they do cover songs and now all of a sudden they're like, record like have record deals and they're touring
yeah,
and all this stuff. And it's like,
mm-hmm,
damn, okay, like you've been in this game for a while and then like you're not blowing up on TikTok. Like, what's wrong with me?
yeah,
Uh, and that can really get to somebody. I mean, it gets to people even outside the creative world. Social media
mm-hmm.
can be a really big source of anxiety, stress. It can really mess with people's heads.
Oh, absolutely. This has not been a, it's not been a, don't get me wrong, I've had tons of fun. I've met great people. I mean, I've had a lot of fun, but mentally, it's a shit
Yeah.
show. It's
Oh
a shit
yeah.
show, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because, like I said, not feeling good enough could
Right.
suck. We a lot of us that are doing this, we work, we got life, we got bills, we got
Mhm.
families, we got this, we got life, we got everything, and this is whatever little spare time we could carve out each day or week, we kind of put our all into this, you know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
not feeling good enough is a huge deterrent. And when we feel like that, like what kind of advice you would have for someone just when they start to get into that headspace, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Before they're there, like once they kind of see that coming, like
Mhm.
what would you say to that?
I mean, I think that's really where like having a good support system comes into place. Having that support system before to that point,
Mm-hmm.
surrounding yourself with people who are going to know when that shift starts to happen if you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and really like people who can call you on it and that you will respect them for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times you can see it in people before they see it in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like a shift in mood, shift in attitude, even their tone of voice. But I think on the other side of that too, a lot of people are really good actors, right? And
Yeah.
like they put on a face and they go to work and everything's great and happy and whatever. And really like inside they're like, this sucks. I want to die.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes it's hard to show that pain,
Hmm.
and
Being
or
vulnerable.
just yeah, just to show that vulnerability sometimes is it just be just too difficult. You know what I'm saying? You've
Hmm.
seen it. I mean, didn't you slap me one time? I think maybe. I don't.
No.
No, no, okay, okay. I thought I did. I thought it was you. No,
Mhm.
but you've seen me like break. You know what I mean? And I've always tried to keep this, this New York machismo going. But we break. We got to keep the facade going. And
Yeah.
it's really scary. You know what I'm saying? But what I've kind of learned to do, like I tell people, take that negativity and use it. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Use it. It's just. I feel like the more people hate, is this more love they're giving you. I feel like it takes more energy to hate someone than it is to love someone. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, some like when I start to feel, man, I don't know if this project is good or am I wasting my time? Should I just stop and just stick to working and putting my degree to use? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
is sometimes, even using that and trying to make it into a positive, is that useful? That could be, you think that could be a little more dangerous, kind of, like I kind of digging my hole a little bit deeper.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on how you're using it, right? I think it could be really cathartic for people to be able to work through that dark time.
Hmm.
But it could also potentially be bad if there's a lot of attention that it garners, right? So like
Hmm.
if you put out a song about being in a really deep depression and people are like, "Oh my gosh, this is great." Right? Then you're going to be like, "Oh, okay, well now I need to start thinking in that mindset more often and
Hmm.
put out work that's more aligned with that." That
Hmm.
could be potentially, not so great for your mental health. Maybe
Yeah,
it'll
yeah.
do good for other things, um,
Yeah, no,
but I
it
think
tends to be bad.
too, there's like this idea of like what defines good enough, right? So like the music that you put out versus the music that like I might listen to all the time. They're pretty different, right? Um,
Hmm.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I don't think your music is good. It's stuff that I would not normally listen to. And then so
Hmm.
people who are listening to your type of music all the time are being more critical of it. They're comparing you to other artists. They're,
Yeah.
oh, he's not as popular as this guy, or, oh, that song sounds
Hmm.
way better than this other person. So then there's a matter of like, okay, well, then what's the rating? Like, there's no standard of good enough other than
Hmm.
like, the Billboard charts basically, but that's
Hmm.
arbitrary.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Even
a lot of
even with
create,
like movies and comic books too, like what I'm saying, like a lot of people try to compare themselves to the big. A matter of fact, last
yeah.
week someone was like, "Man, you out here, you doing your comic books, and you trying to be the next Stan Lee." I mean, I'm trying to be
Right.
the me. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone, I think everyone getting into this would love to build an empire such as him.
Oh,
You
of
know what I'm
course.
saying? But
Yeah, you'd want to be
you know,
successful.
it's hard. Sometimes lightning, like you said, like you go out, all these social media artists, or not even artists, not even call them artists. They don't allow them to deserve that
People.
term, but
Yeah.
they'll put something dumb out, goes viral. Next thing you
Yeah.
know, they got a $50 million deal, some wild shit,
Mhm.
and then 5 years later, they're like homeless and on drugs. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, it happens.
it's scary. You know what I'm saying? Especially social media. Social
Hmm.
media sucks, and
Yeah.
it's bad. But
Hmm.
we need to be on there more. We're creating. We need to build our platform, and
Hmm.
that's harder because that's where a lot of the "am I good enough," the
Right.
criticism, and
Yeah.
that's
And
where a
then
lot of that comes into play.
it comes down to how many likes, how many shares, how many views,
Uh-huh.
and while they are a number, I don't think it's a full picture either.
You know what I'm saying? There's times I wake up in the middle of the night just to see how many did I get any comments or
Mhm.
likes. So
Right.
it's just crazy. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And
Yeah.
it can't be good for mental health. It can't be.
Right. No.
Having to spend just being on it every day is bad, but knowing you kind of need it. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's where a lot of times we see problems there too. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, the comic book community, some amazing folks, but when it comes to fandom, you know what I'm saying? We
Yeah.
love hard and we hate harder, and I feel
Hmm.
like that's where we kind of dig ourselves into that hole and kind of get into those dark places. And sometimes suicide is a thought. It happens. Shit, you know what I'm saying? It's that anxiety,
Hmm.
of fighting, putting out your Kickstarter for the first time, hoping, you know, you make your goal because some people don't make their goal and it will give you that self-doubt. You know what I'm saying? Like
And
when
I
we
think
get there.
that's when it's important really to have that sense of self and sense of identity outside of who you are as a
Mhm.
creator, who you are as an artist,
Mhm.
right? Like give yourself some separation. So whether it's just a really strict schedule that you stick to of like, all right, I'm only going to check the stats of my social media post until 11 o'clock at night, and then that's it. And then I'll look at it
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow, like at 12 o'clock, and kind of really build in those parameters for yourself because otherwise, like we said before with your identity, and this is like an all the time thing,
Mm-hmm.
you get to a point where you are compulsively checking. And then that's not good because then when the number of likes doesn't change, when the reviews doesn't change, then it's the anxiety, like you said, builds up. And what am I doing wrong? Do I have to do something different? And then it's, a whole other rabbit hole of stuff that you're thinking about. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
trying to like build in, but basically like breaks for yourself to
Yeah.
really rest and gather your thoughts, give yourself a break, let yourself not be a creator for a few hours. And I know that's hard in the industry that you guys are in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from like a human and mental health perspective, it's important to
Mm-hmm.
ensure you're getting that rest.
Mm-hmm. So basically, we should just set up boundaries. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? We should set up
Yeah.
these boundaries where we stick to a schedule. Like you said, I after 11 p.m. That's it. I'm shutting it down. I'm not gonna focus on it till 9 the next day.
Hmm.
Like what other boundaries should we make? What other healthy boundaries should we set for ourselves?
I definitely think having stuff to do and interests outside of the creative process. And I mean, obviously lots of things are creative in nature, but like if your primary focus right now is comic books, making sure you're taking time and doing something other than writing stories or drawing graphics and stuff like that. I think making sure you just have a good community around you, whether that's a community of like-minded individuals or not, whether it's friends, families that are outside the creative realm. I think that's really important because when you're starting to look at metrics and, views and shares and social media comments and, what's the next project, how'd the last project do, all that kind of stuff, it can get really isolating if you just stay in that mindset all the time. So kind of giving yourself a break from that. And then I guess really at the end of the day, like just knowing who you are as a person outside of that creative realm, which can be hard because like we've talked about it, your identity becomes so intertwined with who you are as an artist or a creator.
No, absolutely. And like I mentioned before, one thing we tend to worry about is when we're putting this project is done, we're putting it out, we're launching
Yeah.
our crowdfunding campaign, or we're going, direct to consumer. However, we're ready to just make this money or try to at the
Mhm.
very least.
Right.
Some people they reach their Kickstarter goals. Some blow them out the water and make 10
Mhm.
times more. I've seen $100,000 Kickstarter campaigns off of just a $4,000 minimum. Like I've seen some crazy shit,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't. Even with you know low, um, you know like $500 campaigns, some people just don't. And
Mhm.
how can how should a creator just separate their worth from these results? Like, does it mean you're a bad creator because you're $100 short on
Yeah.
your Kickstarter goal? Or maybe we just need to work a little harder? Like, how do we separate that from the financial part of it?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, the financial part is obviously huge. I mean, I think really just kind of like conceptualizing it as a single setback. Um, right? Like it sucks in the moment that that didn't do very good, but what can you learn from it, right? Like everything is a learning opportunity in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even if it's rejection, even if something fails or doesn't go exactly how you thought, like what can you learn from it? What have you now gathered in terms of information? Maybe you're just not targeting the timing that the Kickstarter started, the timing that your reel dropped, the timing that your Facebook post went up, whatever the case might be. And you can use that stuff as data points to kind of make it better or different next time. And then I think really it just comes down to, again, making sure that your identity is not solely wrapped up in those kind of things and knowing that you can fail and you can still be okay, right? Like
Yeah.
it can be true that your Kickstarter failed, but your project is a good project.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Yeah.
two can be true at the same time.
And sometimes failing, if that's what you want to call it, because I don't, to me, once you give up, you fail. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
Hmm.
like like you said, because you don't reach your goal doesn't mean you got a bad project.
Right.
It all comes down to, what did you do to let people know, and were
Yeah.
you engaging with your community? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So like I said, that brings us back to having to dig into and spend more time on social media because, we gotta put up content, and that
Mhm.
alone could get time consuming. Being like having
Yeah.
to put up content frequently, fucking tiring.
Mhm. Sure.
Absolutely tiring. Like once I started to, you know, get into this side of having to market my stuff, I'm like, Jesus Christ. It
Yeah.
made it seem a little easier in school than actually having to be out because you gotta just
Yeah.
it's constant, constant,
Yeah. I mean, but even
and
like you see the people on social media nowadays, right? Like with TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the reels and stuff like that. People are putting them out constantly, and it's usually just them walking around with their cell phone in their hand, recording whatever's going on. And you see some of these people have like really wild success doing that.
mhm.
But they're like few and far
Far between.
between if
Yeah,
you really
exactly.
stop and think about it. But
Hmm.
people are seeing that and going, "Oh, well, she
I
did
could
it,
do.
he did it, I could do that. Like it's easy." And it's not, right? And then
Hmm.
then you start to feel some type of way about like, well, why isn't it working for me? And that can start to lead to the depression and the anxiety. And then like, well, maybe I should just give up and I don't want to do this. And then you feel like a failure, even though, like you said, it's not a failure
Hmm.
unless you totally walk away and give up and you're out of it. But in that moment, it probably feels like it's a failure.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, no. Yeah, it it definitely does because I mean, I've been fortunate so far that you know I was able to make a profit with my comics, but even now I still get anxiety. Like I've got a couple projects out that I'm currently working on. My card game, I swear to God, this is the most anxiety riddled thing I've ever had to work on
Mhm.
because I feel like the that market is a little different. Like I've been tapping into several markets. Music is different. I'm the kind of shit I'm used to. The comic
Mhm.
books was a little different, but trading card games is. I swear, I'm probably gonna call you like another 10 times, crying hysterically, just to
Okay.
prepare because I'm in beta testing now. So
Charge
I'm deaf.
$165 an hour. I'll bill you.
Nah. No, 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 no. Listen, I made you a character in my comic book. It's
You're
free.
welcome.
You know, but
But she'll never
with
know.
that, I like to work on a lot of projects. I like to keep my mind busy. Is that healthy? Like I know
Yeah.
staying busy is good, but
Mhm.
too busy is that healthy? Because maybe that I feel like that kind of brings it back to getting burned out and
Mhm.
getting tired. Like
Yeah.
is it healthy to obsess over your own shit?
I think there's a line for sure.
Hmm.
I mean, I think staying busy is definitely a coping tool for a lot of people. For a lot of us, it just is easier to just keep going and doing and not stop and think, creator or not creator. But I do think that there's a line where, you become so hyper focused on putting out a project or multiple projects even that the obsession does become unhealthy. And usually we see a lot with people with OCD. It's a form of anxiety, right? So
Hmm.
if you're obsessing over a project, you might not feel anxious about it, but from a clinical standpoint, it is anxiety, right? And then how sustainable is that? Like, can
Hmm.
you pour your all and like 23 and a half hours a day into a project for 2 weeks? Probably. But then at some point, like you're done. Like you're just gonna crash. And it's not probably gonna be a good look for anybody. And trying to find a way to balance that with, you know, being very obsessive on the project coming out exactly the way that you want it is good to a point. But I'm sure even for yourself, you can look back on the comics you've put out, the songs you've written, and pick them apart
Hmm.
if you tried. If you continually obsessed about it. So I think at some point it has to be again that break, that hard stop of it is what it is. I'm happy with this, I'm satisfied with it, I'm going to walk away from it. Because at some point, you're just, if you don't let it
Yeah.
be good enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. You know what I'm saying? Now, before we wrap things up, oh, okay, it looks like my internet connection is acting up, but I think it's fine now. You hear me? Everything's good, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll cut that out. But before we wrap things up, like, is there any advice you have for us creators that, right now we're just feeling a little down and, you know, we just need some words of encouragement.
Hmm. I mean, like the age-old adage is like, just keep going one day at a time. But I mean, I think really at the end of the day, like do it from a place of passion and desire. Like don't do it out of desperation. Don't do it to, become a multimillionaire, world famous rapper kind of thing, or, the next Stan Lee. Like, do it because this is something you really enjoy. And if you get to that point, great. Like, that's an added bonus. But I think, enjoying the creative process along the way and appreciating it for what it is and not getting wrapped up in the, oh, well, it could be this, it should be that, I want it to be this. Like, it is what it is right now, and that can be okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can still be good, even if you don't have a million likes, even if you don't have a million views, right? Like it's still good work.
That's what's up. You see, and those are some gems right there, you know? You know what I'm saying? And, I do want to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah,
You
of course.
know, mental health is a serious thing. It's not really spoken about, and sometimes I feel like, you just need to put the word out there, man. We gotta look out after yourself. You gotta stay healthy for everyone. Keep putting out the best projects that you can, and keep trucking, man. It's entertainment is shitty. It's fun. We all want the money, but it could be shitty on your head. Just stay focused,
Yeah.
man, and just keep moving. I mean, those are my two thoughts. And you know, here's a little plug, shameless plug I'm gonna put in there. You know what I'm saying? Issue 3 of Chaos Theory is coming out. I would say you pick it up because you get to see her s- kill my best friend. You know what I'm saying? She slices his throat with a razor blade. Now you're probably like, what the fuck is happening? Go check it out.
Be
But on
careful of the
that
white
note,
girls.
Nicole, thank you for joining us
Yeah.
and,
Thanks for having me.
you know, have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.
Bye
Stay
bye.
safe.